Trying this again. Maybe it'll work this time. I hope everybody's able to find it. If you're joining us, I hope you learned something. Scriptural Salvation Baptist Tabernacle. Alright, there's you. Okay, so what I was talking about, Psalm 119, that the children have been reading through, is the longest chapter in the Bible, and it is an acrostic poem. What that means is when we read through the first week, it was called Aleph for the Hebrew letter A, and the first verse of that section would have started with the Hebrew letter A. Last week, we read Beth, which is the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and the first verse of that section would have started with the letter Beth. This week is Gimel. So when I bring up the first verse and Hannah is reading it, remember that it actually starts with the Hebrew letter Gimel, which is the third letter of their alphabet.
Deal bountifully with your servant that I may live and keep your word.
Nice.
All right, how's that? Can we see it? Is anybody there?
Yeah, I can see it.
You're not on the live stream.
Open my eyes that I may behold wondrous things out of your law. I am a
Sojourner.
soldier on the earth. Hide not your commandments from me.
Very good.
My soul is consumed with longing for your rules at all times. You rebuke the insolent, accursed ones who wander from your commandments.
Take away from me Sacorn.
Scorn.
Oh,
Just scorn.
scorn and
Contempt.
for I have keep your testimonies enough, even though, princess, sit plotting against me, your servant will meditate on your statutes.
Your testimonies are my delight. They are my counselors. So what this section is talking about is a sojourner is somebody who is only in some place temporarily. So the person who wrote this poem says, I am a sojourner on the earth. I'm only here temporarily. But when I am here, I want to keep God's commandments. I want to have a law to live with. Keep evil people away from me.
Now we're on chapter 5.
This is still chapter 4.
Very
Oh.
uncomfortable.
Okay.
I was correct.
Yes, Paul was correct. And remember, we have a Paul.
Clap, clap.
Oh.
Clap on.
Okay, Paul, there's enough time.
Now it's time for my favorite reader.
All right. Oh, there we go.
Daniel 5, King Belshazzar made a great feast for 1,000 of his lords and drank wine in front of the 1,000. Belshazzar, when he tasted the wine, commanded that the vessels of gold and of silver that Nebuchadnezzar his father had taken out of the temple in Jerusalem be brought, that the king and his lords, his wives, and his concubines might drink from them. Then they brought in the golden vessels that had been taken out of the temple, the house of God in Jerusalem. And the king and his lords, his wives, and his concubines drank from them. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone.
So our last chapter, chapter 4, took place toward the end of the rule of King Nebuchadnezzar. This was sometime between 605 BC and 562 BC. Belshazzar, who's the king that we're talking about here in this chapter, ruled around 540 BC. So it has been over 20 years and the Bible hasn't said anything. So normally we start a Bible chapter, we're learning about Jonah, we're learning about the Exodus, we're learning about anything. When a historian or a expert or anybody that is not a Bible scholar reads a Bible passage, they're going to look at it and go, well, that's not true. I am skeptical of it. The historians, of course, are skeptical of this chapter, and they have many things I'll go through and tell you why they have the ideas that they do and why these things did happen in history. Because remember, in order for us to trust the Bible, we have to know that this stuff is true. Belshazzar, who it's talking about, it mentions him as the king. It says King Belshazzar. Well, Belshazzar was the crown prince, meaning he was the next in line to rule. The actual king at that time was Nabonidus. It was Belshazzar's father. Which leads us to our next thing. The historians say, well, the Bible can't be true because it says Belshazzar is the crown, or Belshazzar is the king, and Nebuchadnezzar was Belshazzar's father. Well, it is true that Nebuchadnezzar was not Belshazzar's father, but this isn't an historical problem. It's perfectly fine because stuff like this happens in ancient writings all the time. When King Nebuchadnezzar first stormed Jerusalem and took over, he was just crowned prince Nebuchadnezzar. He wasn't the king, but the sources at the time referred to him as king because he was the ruler that was coming in and taking over. Same thing with Belshazzar. He was in trouble, or in control, not trouble. Yeah, I know. Your daddy said something silly, huh?
Yep.
Yeah,
He was the
he's
crown.
totally in trouble.
He was the crown prince serving as the king. So, just because the Bible identifies Belshazzar as the king and says that Nebuchadnezzar is his father does not mean you take this entire book of the Bible and throw it away and ignore it. Yeah, I know that. In many, many chapters of the Bible, it is common to call all of your ancestors your father. Jesus said that he was a son of David. Well, David lived in BC and set up the kingdom of Israel, and Jesus came, well, he was the whole reason for AD, hundreds of years later. So how was he able to call David his father? Well, he was his ancestor. It was a common term for it. It happens other places in the Bible. For some reason, historians try to use that as a proof that this entire chapter should be forgotten about. Now, we talked about the stuff that was stolen from the temple and brought to Babylon, made out of gold, all kinds of precious stuff. Right now, Belshazzar is hosting a feast, and in his feast, he goes in and grabs all of the beautiful golden stuff and brings them in, and they praise the gods Bel and Baal and whatever, all those Babylonian gods. And they're using the stuff from the temple in Jerusalem. Now, I find it interesting that as they, at the end of this chapter, the last verse, it said that they were praising their gods made of gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone, because Nebuchadnezzar's statue was made of gold, silver, bronze, iron, and clay. So I just thought it was interesting that how they pieced together.
Ah.
Yes, Paul.
Okay.
Well, it's part of clay.
All right. So,
Immediately the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plastered wall of the king's palace opposite the lampstand. And the king saw the hand as it wrote. Then the king's color changed, and his thoughts alarmed him. His limbs gave way, and his knees knocked together. The king called loudly to bring in the enchanters, the Chaldeans, and the astrologers. The king declared to the wise men of Babylon, "Whoever reads this writing and shows me its interpretation shall be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold around his neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom." Then all the king's wise men came in, but they could not read the writing or make known to the king the interpretation. Then King Belshazzar was greatly alarmed, and his color changed, and his lords were perplexed. The queen, because of the words of the king and his lords, came into the banqueting hall, and the queen declared, "O king, live forever. Let not your thoughts alarm you, or your color change. There is a man in your kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. In the days of your father, light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, were found in him. And King Nebuchadnezzar, your father the king, made him chief of the magicians, enchanters, Chaldeans, and astrologers, because an excellent spirit, knowledge and understanding to interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve problems were found in this Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will show the interpretation."
I love the look on this lady's face. Just so this is supposed to be a picture that. Have any of you kids heard of the writing on the wall? Have you heard that the writing's on the wall? Did you ever hear that?
No.
It comes from this Bible story. We'll kind of get into what it actually means, but here's a painting done by Rembrandt, a famous Dutch painter, of what he thought the writing on the wall was. I do it. Her face just takes up. Her face is funny. This lady right here. She looks so shocked. All right. So sitting in the feast, they're having a great time. They're praising their gods of gold, silver, bronze, wood, and stone. They're drinking out of the Jerusalem temple vessels. They're they're not being very good to God. And over in the corner, it says that by the lampstand, a hand came out of nowhere and started to write on the plaster of the wall. Lampstand in Hebrew is menorah. If you've ever, Jewish songs for Hanukkah talk about menorahs. Menorah is the lamp that would have been inside the temple. We don't know if Belshazzar was using the temple menorah or if he had his own. We're not sure, but I just think it's interesting that is what the menorah would have looked like.
Ah. Wait, it looks like one of those, it's pretty. Yeah.
Looks like one of those things from Hanukkah, right? It's kind of funny that I just said that, isn't it, right?
Because it is.
Yeah.
Not listening.
Wow.
Yep,
What my
very-
father just said.
Yeah, very good, Grace. Thank you.
Or the 18th of Hanukkah.
Ah,
That's
the writing on the
the real
wall.
That's the real name for it.
Vandalism.
This is where we get that term, writing on the wall. Comes from this passage. So where else have we seen a random human hand come out of nowhere in this book? It was in Nebuchadnezzar's dream about the statue.
Oh,
There was
chapter
this-
2.
Yes, Paul, it was in chapter 2. It was a beautiful statue. You remember what the statue was made out of?
Gold, silver, bronze, iron, and gold.
Clay.
Clay.
Yes. If you didn't hear Paul, he said a head of gold, shoulder of silver, thighs of bronze, and the legs of iron, and the feet of iron and clay. What happens at the end of that dream is a human hand comes out of nowhere and throws a rock at the feet of the statue, and it falls down. That's where we've seen a random human hand come out in this book as well. It happens here. Shows up on and starts writing on the wall. So Belshazzar says, let's bring in the Chaldeans. We've met them a few times before, right? The wise guys?
Yep.
Yeah. Here they are. They're failures, though. You know what I think the Chaldeans remind me of?
What?
Weathermen. The Chaldeans were just weathermen. They go up there, say whatever they wanted, and if they were wrong, they still stayed in their jobs.
1:40 a.m.
Paul,
That does not matter.
So, I equate the Chaldeans with meteorologists. They're failures.
Of Fox News.
So suddenly, at the end of the chapter, somebody remembers Daniel. They're like, oh, wait a minute. There was this guy that was here 20 years ago. He did all these great things. Bring him back. Probably because there haven't been any prophetic dreams in 20 or so years. So Daniel just kind of went about his business. The writing on the wall. The face. So I'm going to summarize 5:13 through 23. Nothing new is revealed in this section. It's just repeated. So you'll thank me for this. Because all it just says is it repeats over what we've already heard. The king comes in and says, I'll give you a purple robe and hang a gold chain around your neck. I'll make you the third in command of the entire kingdom because my wise guys stink. I'll give you all this great stuff if you can tell me what this writing means. Daniel turns down these gifts and he speaks highly of Nebuchadnezzar. He's like, well, Nebuchadnezzar had a lot of power. He could do a lot of things. But what did happen to Nebuchadnezzar, and Daniel gives us the reason why Nebuchadnezzar fell, he was proud. He thought so much of himself that he didn't care that it was God giving it to him. So then Daniel goes on and tells the Boanthropy story about King Nebuchadnezzar turning into an ox, and he finishes off this section by saying, listen, you were alive, you knew that all this stuff happened, you knew that Nebuchadnezzar made pronouncements to believe in my God and to praise El Elyon, or else you're going to turn into an ox and eat grass in the field. You should have seen this coming, Belshazzar, but you didn't.
Nope.
Belshazzar actually is mocking God with the vessels from the temple. He's saying, El Elyon, you're not that great because I can take your stuff out of your temple and drink wine to my gods of gold, bronze, silver, wood, and stone. So he's mocking him. Our God does not take very well to that.
No.
He praises the idols of those things. There's no comparison, though. Like, when you think of it, El Elyon, our God Most High, is much better than any god made out of gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. There's no comparing him. And then Daniel goes on to compare him. He says that these idols do not see or hear or know. They're statues. But the God in whose hand is your breath, when he talks about our God is the one that puts the very breath in you and makes you live. There's no comparison. These idols of gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone don't hear your prayers. They don't see you, and they don't know what's going on. Why worship them? this one is for me. I need to skip to 443. Remember that.
Oh yeah.
Where am I going?
43.
Okay. Where am I going?
430.
No, you gotta get it right or else it's gonna be silly.
443.
Okay.
And you have
Ooh.
but the Gothus are all used.
It sounds like it's speaking a different
Okay. All right. Order in the cord. I'll have a cheeseburger. Okay.
What?
It's a dad joke, Anna. All right.
It's not funny.
Oh, of course it is. All right.
Then from his presence the hand was sent, and this writing was inscribed. And this is the writing that was inscribed. Mene, Mene, Tekel, and Parson. This is the interpretation of the matter. Mene, God has numbered the days of your kingdom and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed in the balances and found wanting. Paris, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then Belshazzar gave the command, and Daniel was clothed with purple. A chain of gold was put around his neck, and a proclamation was made about him that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. That very night, Belshazzar, the Chaldean king, was killed, and Darius the Mede received the kingdom, being about 62 years old.
Okay.
Then
Hey,
fire.
no. Hey. Okay.
Let's go into the next one. 4 exclamation. What the heck?
This is Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parson.
That's what it says?
What?
Aramaic.
Mandarin.
No, not Mandarin.
Mandarin is Chinese. and it's
Aramaic. You read it
left to right. to
this direction. So I'm going to go here
Still don't make sense.
to here.
Da.
Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parson.
It sounds
Tickle?
like da.
Tekel.
He's a tickle.
B. Da,
Tickle.
da.
No.
Tickle.
No, Hannah.
Da, da.
Several theories about why they looked at it and it wasn't understood. So some facts first. Mene is Aramaic for either a mina, which is a coin, which is a noun, a mina. Do you have a mina for me? Or to number or count, a verb. It can mean either one.
I know what a verb is.
Yeah, very good. Tekel is an Aramaic word for either a shekel, which is another coin, which is a noun, or to weigh or weigh it, which is a verb. Could mean either one. Tekel.
Tickle. Fun.
That's not funny.
That's a scary.
Not even
Yes.
funny at all.
Yes, it was. Parson is Aramaic for either a half mina, half minas, it's a plural word, a plural noun. Perez is Aramaic for a half mina, noun, or break it apart. Paras is Aramaic for Persia. Persia. So, some people think that the reason that Belshazzar didn't know what the writing on the wall was is because it was written in a crazy unknown language.
Yeah.
That's not true.
Sounds like
It was written in Aramaic, and this is what they spoke in Babylon. They read this every day. It was written on the wall. They knew what this said. They looked right at it, and they went, mina, shekel, parson. Yep. So theory 2 is maybe they didn't understand it because instead of writing it right to left like it would have been read, yeah, they were backwards, not left to right. They wrote it right to left. They wrote it up and down in rows. Because remember this? No. Remember this painting? Look how this is written. In columns.
Oh.
Maybe they didn't understand it because it was written in columns.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't matter. Just go with, trust me on this one.
Even though it does.
No.
But I was reading back to right.
Well, yeah, but you can't. It's a different language.
You know, it's confusing.
So some people think that that's the reason why. That it was because it was written differently. If you've ever seen a T-shirt where they write things in corners and you have to try to figure out which way they're writing it, maybe that's why the message got confused. Well, no. No. That's not true either. Theory 3, they were looking at it, they're looking on the wall, and they see a bunch of nouns. Mene, mene, tekel, parson. We see 2 coins, another coin, and a coin. But what was actually meant was the verbs. So example, I could say quarter, and it could either mean the coin, which is 1/4 of a dollar, or chop somebody into 4 pieces. I could quarter you. This Bible verse is going for the chop them into pieces, not give them $1/4.
Okay then.
I'm sure that's exactly what it
It's
meant.
exactly what it meant, Jake. Also, the other thing to remember that I may not have told you this yet, Hebrew and Aramaic
Have
They-
no vowels.
did not write their words with vowels in them. They just wrote the consonants. They leave the vowels out, and then as you were reading the word, you had to insert the vowels in yourself. Yes, those are the vowels, A, E, I, O, U. Well, they didn't write with them. So think of the word grace without any vowels in it, be GRC. So as you're reading through, you'd look at a bunch of consonants, and you'd have to throw in the vowels to make it sound right. So there, Hannah would be in trouble because, yeah. So, AH, yeah.
And what?
So, yeah. Every now and again, you'll see me, instead of typing out the word God, G-O-D, I will type out Yahweh, but in Hebrew, it would be Y-H-W-H. Yahweh.
Yahweh.
So, parson, the very last word from mene, mene, tekel, parson,
They wouldn't have the A in.
I can almost looks like an R.
Yes.
Yep. Parson, plural for half minas. Paras. So if you take this word and take the plural off of it, it's the same exact word, but depending on how you're reading it, what vowels you put in it, it becomes a different word. So the first part, Daniel says to Belshazzar, your days have been weighed, you're found lacking, your kingdom will be divided. And then when he says it to him again, he says, we're going to give your kingdom to Persia. Well, the exact same word, depending on how you're reading it and what vowels you put in there, could mean either divided or Persia. Which is fascinating because at this point in history, Persia was a divided empire. It was called Media and Persia, the Medes and the Persians. So it was divided. October 539 BC, the Persians took the Euphrates River that Babylon sat on and diverted it with a bunch of canals. So they made the Euphrates River dry up, and they were able to walk in and take over the city. And everything that this chapter of the Bible talks about, where Babylon is taken over and Persia takes over, comes true. So this happened. What's fascinating about the whole thing is Belshazzar calls Daniel great, but Daniel was the one that says, hey, you stink. I don't like you as a leader. You're going to die. And I'm going to give your kingdom to someone else. All the time, Belshazzar is, he's like, Daniel, you are amazing. Even though I'm going to die and lose my kingdom. So there you have it. There you have it.
Hey, where's the people that are getting chopped in quarters?
So I still don't speak Aramaic or read it, but I figured I'd kind of show you how some mistake. Get out of my chair.
Oh.
It's not your chair.
All right, from here we will.
Some more? Have her ending song.
From here I will end the live broadcast and hope to see you all at some time.